hunting kangaroos. Like that's wild. A blind squirrel can find a nut.
Popped out of the bushes with a ghillie suit on. This guy's gun barrels pointed like right at us for our face. Boom! Pellets spray over us. We're like, ah!
Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Bows, Bros, and Bucks. This is episode number 5. Today we have some awesome guys from Hunter's Advantage. So we'll have them explain what their channel is and how they really got into hunting.
Okay. First of all, Kyle, thank you for inviting us on. We really appreciate it. It always amazes me every time someone invites me on a podcast to talk about hunting because I'm like, what can I add to the conversation? But I like talking about it nonetheless. So I'm Christian Babcock. I founded Hunter's Advantage 2019. So we do a podcast, we film hunts, we do a bunch of interesting videos about deer hunting in hopes of just making people better at hunting and becoming better at it ourselves. That was the main selfish goal when I started this. So I've been doing that since about 2019, trying to shoot some nice bucks along the way. And Jake joined me in 2020, I think. And then I'll let him introduce himself. I won't go too deep in his nice.
Well, I joined because I was like, listen, you're kind of lacking on like killing big bucks, and I really think I can
Right.
help you with that. But yeah, I jumped on like 2020. This is, I think, like the fifth little page, I guess
Media group that we've had.
yeah, that we attempted. But yeah, I'm in Northeast Oklahoma, so if you have any fans like that in the good old state of Oklahoma, then yeah, holla at you.
Hold on, kid.
And you're Christian, you want to explain where you're at?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I usually just keep that out of my bio just so people don't hate on me. I'm from Oklahoma, but I have to always put that disclaimer when I say this. I'm from Oklahoma, but I live in Georgetown, Texas. So Central Texas is where I live now.
Awesome. So so you guys wanted to start it that way. So you're the founder. What got you into hunting originally before wanting to film?
Oh my gosh, that's a. Do you
If
have 2 hours?
in a 5 minute.
I'm just kidding. No, I got into hunting because where we grew up in Northeast Oklahoma, if you don't hunt or fish, there's no other hobbies. There's nothing else
There's
to do.
nothing.
I mean, unless you like spending time at the skate park or like halfway playing tennis at the park, that's the only other activities there is to do. So everybody hunted. I grew up hunting with my uncle and my dad. I shot my first deer when I was 8 years old. That was back when we had to like take the deer to the check-in station. And I remember taking my first deer to the check-in station. It was like a 42-pound fawn. And the lady was
Oh
like,
gosh.
she looked at my uncle and she was like, why would you let him shoot this? And I was like, hey, bro, I'm 8. Like, I don't know. I thought that was a big no at the time. But
Still had the spots on it.
barely, dude. It was phasing out. It was close. No, that's how I got started hunting though. I mean, I grew up in a hunting family. My dad hunted quite a bit. My uncle hunted quite a bit, and just been doing it for forever. Jake and I have been hunting together since how 10 or 11, 12, something like that.
Before we could drive, that's all I know.
Way before
Yeah.
we could drive when we were bumming rides from friends, so or from family. So yeah, we've been hunting a long time. That's kind of how I got started. I'll let Jake tell his piece though.
Yeah, it's kind of much the same. I mean, because like you already said, there ain't much else to do here besides hunt or fish. And fishing's kind of what like how our friendship came about because uh I kind of lived out like probably 5 miles out of town, and our neighbor had this really good creek running through his property, and he was kind enough to let us walk up and down it, and that's about what all of our summers consisted of, and sometimes like fall and winter, because before we were like old enough to like really drive, or parents kind of trusted us with guns outside of a 22 shooting birds, then that's kind of what we did. And so yeah, first love was definitely fishing, and then sooner or later it's just like you're like, okay, fishing's cool, like you can only catch so many like 1 pounders before
Half pounders.
yeah, like things start kind of getting dull, and then you end up shooting a deer, and then you're like, my life's changed.
100%. I mean, I've told all my viewers this already, but basically that's how I started getting into the outdoors because my parents are both from England, so
Oh,
it's not,
really?
That's
yeah,
so awesome.
so I'm not, I didn't grow up in like a hunting family. Like my mom's still, she's a Liverpool person, so she's a Scouser,
There we go.
like Paddy the Baddie the
Paddy Pimblett,
fighter.
baby.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Scousers don't get knocked out. That's what I
no, they
heard.
don't. Yeah, so I don't do if buts or maybes. I do absolutes, that kind of stuff. So so yeah, my dad loves guns though. Like he's a big gun guy, but like we never got into hunting. And I started like a bass fishing team in my high school, did like guiding and stuff like that. Started my own like guiding service, and I just loved that. Like I went down to Florida and fished with like a Forest Wood Cup winner on Okeechobee. So much fun, like
Really?
fishing down there. And then I got into hunting, and I was the same way. Like I killed a button buck for my first deer, and then killed a small deer, and then I've been getting bigger and bigger. Got my first Pope and Young, and they've all been with bows. I haven't been fortunate enough to gun hunt much. Just some of the things that I just wanted to talk about is baiting legal in your guys' states? I know in Texas a lot of people use feeders, and Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, Texas, they mainly use feeders and high fences, and then like
I was gonna say.
In Oklahoma, yeah, you're allowed to use corn and mineral basically any like all times of the year.
But not on public land.
True.
Not on public land. So yeah, the baiting is definitely a big thing in Texas. I don't hunt much in Texas because it's not very public land friendly, but they do allow baiting, and we've had a lot of success in Oklahoma with overbait. I mean, it's kind of one of those things you hear people talking about it in Ohio quite a bit. It's like if if you do not use bait, you're going to lose to someone who is. And it's kind of like a necessary evil in Oklahoma. If you're not baiting, everyone else is. So you might as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting to me because I'm sure a lot of people would be like, "Oh, ban baiting," and then we'll all be from scratch. But then you have the other people that are like, "Well, I know people are still going to do it because it's been legal forever." So I mean, I don't know if you guys listen to the Hunter podcast,
Yeah,
those
I've
guys
listened to
over
it.
there. Yeah, so they talk about baiting a lot in Ohio and stuff like that, and it's interesting because here in New Hampshire and New England, like the hunting's so hard, and you also can't bait. So it's like big woods deer. There's not really any food plots. I mean, I've hunted over that stuff kind of in Idaho and done more spot and stalk and more open stuff, and that's definitely been a lot easier for me than the big wood stuff. I mean, I had to learn topography and all that stuff. But did you guys, when you're hunting over bait, so obviously everyone's doing it, so it's a little bit more difficult because everybody has an attractant. Do you set up downwind, obviously, or on a trail to it, or do you just hunt right over it and they don't really care?
Christy, you want me to take this one?
Yeah, what do you do, Jake?
If I could, I would sit on the feeder if it wouldn't like blow everything up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I know that set like 50, 60 yards like down a trail thinking they're going to catch him coming to the feed. But I mean, at least on the private that I have here, it's just like there's not, it seems like around here, everything's broken up into like 30-acre segments. And so when you're trying to hunt a piece like that, it's just like, you know, I don't really have that what's the word I'm looking for? I don't have that capability of like moving like different things around like a whole lot
Yeah.
without really screwing things up. Because like basically the only timber I have on my private is like bedding, and there's not even a whole lot of that. So yeah, I mean, me personally, I set up like 40 yards from the feeder and hunt over it.
I would I would definitely recommend people hunting over the feeders. One of the issues you're going to have if you put your feeder like past you is I could see that creating some sort of potential issues with deer getting downwind of you. I always want the deer to
Mm,
stay upwind of me when they're feeding, but the feeder thing is an interesting one because it can be fairly easy if you're on an unpressured property to kill a mature deer over a feeder. But you also have a lot of issues with getting in and out. Like when you
that's
get
what I
in
was
the
gonna say.
yeah, you get in the morning, right? It's like it's a little easier with cell cameras, but what do you do when you walk in at 5:30 in the morning and you're like, "Hey, there's 8 deer at the feeder." I got
Mm,
one of two options: go home or scare them off and hope they come back. And then you have vice versa. You have the same issue. when in the evenings, when you're hunting and you got 7 or 8 deer at the feeder and lights winding down, you got to find a way to get those off of it so you can leave. And so it's not, you're creating some sort of pressure every time you're going in on that. So I like to use the feeders sparingly. It's like when I go in and hunt over a feeder, I'm hoping to kill because I'm going to create some sort of pressure on that property after I kill a deer anyways. So I wait for the right moment to go hunt the feeders, and I expect to kill every time I go in on one because access can be an issue.
Right. Now, I've kind of had a similar example of that. Like, if you try to hunt it in the morning, I've had times where I have to be down at 10:30 to go do something, and then 11 o'clock rolls around and there's still like a little button buck or a little fawn just kind of milling there at the feeder. And I mean, a lot of times, I think I told you about this before, Christy. Uh, there was this little button buck right behind me, and he was just sitting like at this little licking branch. I don't like only like the little spikes and fork horns use this little spot right there, just probably 5 yards behind my ladder stand. And it got to the point where I was like trying to scare him off. Like I had a Red Bull can in my bag, and I was like, I want to try to just drop it on the ground. Maybe that thing will get startled, take off. Well, it didn't. It just sit there and like looked at it. A young deer. And so I was like, well, I'm going to gather up my stuff. And I was able to put my camera and get everything ready to go. And I was halfway down the ladder, and that thing was just sitting there still looking at me. And I was like, okay, it's time to leave now. And then finally it was like started yelling and took off. But I was like, that wasn't supposed to happen because again, you don't want to blow everything at your horn, but sometimes you kind of just have to. And that's one of the downsides to it, I'd say.
There's pros and cons to hunting over feeders
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, one of the questions I was gonna say is, what do you do to spook them out? I do things like if I have deer around me and it's after legal shooting light, obviously you can't wait for them to always walk off, especially if they're feeding around you or at a feeder. So I use coyote calls sometimes off my phone or whatever the case to spook them out. Is that something that you guys do, or what
I
are some strategies?
I usually like Ric Flair off the top rope and just flying elbow one. No, that's a good one. Coyote call, like anything that you can imitate that sounds somewhat real. Like if you hit a coyote call 20 yards from the feeder, they're gonna be like, "How did that get there without me hearing it?" But it's better than clinging metal going
For
down.
sure.
Like coyote call. Sometimes I'll have like a hoot owl call that usually lives in my turkey vest, but sometimes makes its way into my bag. So we'll do that barred owl call, or a good old fashioned hey. If you got to do that, that'll run them off too. Anything but like metal clanking is what I'll do. I don't know what you do, Jake.
I usually just try to shine them. Like I've had a couple
Hmm,
instances where I was stuck in the blind and I had my headlamp, and I would like start with like a little strobe and just quickly turn it off to see if that they're like, okay, I don't know what that was, let's get out of here. But if they really stick around, then I'll just shine them and call it good.
interesting.
Or what I've tend to do, like if it's kind of an open field and I know they're kind of stuck in the field for the evening, I'll just as quietly as I can just start sneaking out the back. And then, I mean, if you're in the stand, that's a little different because they might, see your silhouette climbing out of the tree. But if it's like an open field and a blind, then I usually just try to walk out without a headlamp as far as I can.
Um, do you see that deer? I know a lot of times out here, maternal or mature does will teach their fawns, hey, there's someone up in that tree usually, so I'm gonna stomp here and look up there. So I've seen that where I've been up in a climber, I'll switch trees and then I'll see her do that to that tree, teaching her fawns. Do you see that with feeders where they're like, hey, I'm gonna stomp here, look over there just in case there's someone near this feeder?
Those ones don't stick around very long because I shoot them. But
Dumb ways
but
to die.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they definitely do though. I mean, there's does like I hunt a very unpressured lease, one of my properties in Southwest Oklahoma,
Okay,
and there is still does like I'm when I say unpressured, like this place gets hunted like 2 to 3 times a year. So there's no reason that these deer should be this way.
that's nice.
But you just see a head come out of the grass, and it's just like before you see the deer, you just see a head start doing this, and you're like, that's the one. Like you're right though, there is matriarchal does, and like just like a buck structure, it seems like there's like a lead doe, and she's always the most cautious, and she always lets you know exactly where that potential threat's going to be. But I always try to shoot that one.
Yeah, that it's I mean, what I don't know what your rules are for like tags and stuff. Like I can't just go shoot a doe because like that would ruin my buck tag for the state I'm in. But in Massachusetts, you get like multiple tags, so it's a lot easier. So it's not like you can go shoot three does because we have a very low population of deer and one of the highest per square miles of hunters. So it just is a bad combination with a lot of the things up here that kind of ruin the hunting compared to other places. But that's interesting. So for leasing, that's an interesting topic. Is that what most of the hunting is in Oklahoma and Texas is private land leases? Can you knock doors? Like I'm a person that goes and knocks a million doors to shed hunt and find all those things. What about you guys?
Uh, the only private land I've ever hunted was either like my neighbor's land, kind of like I was talking about earlier, how we would walk the creek and fish. That same neighbor let me hunt, which was probably 500-600 yards from where my mom lives now. Uh, he let me hunt in one of his stands. Actually, I think it was one
It's
of Christian's,
Justin's.
uncle's
Yeah.
stands that he left back there and then just forgot about. So I always set in it, and that's what I set in for my first shoot. I don't know, 2 or 3 seasons when I first started getting into bow hunting. And other than that, it's just been like family land. Like I've been pretty fortunate to have. It seems like I got more family members than most that are still sticking around. So yeah, I got a lot of family land, but other than that, like I've never leased.
And that the like if you're looking to get a lease, like let's say there's a lot of them posted on Facebook, or there's a lot of them posted on different forums, or like base camp leasing. There is a lot of that in Oklahoma, but a lot of those properties are extremely expensive, and they get recycled quite a bit through folks, that are looking to have a short-term gain. I think it's very hard to manage long term on those leases because, one, they're really expensive to get into, and two, it seems like a lot of them have been shot out, which I don't think that's unique to Oklahoma. Like, by the way, I think
Yeah,
that's a lot of leases across the country.
I'd agree
But
with that.
there's also a plethora of public land, like most states, right? And most states have a lot of public land hunting for whitetail. I just would say Texas is one of those ones that just really doesn't. Like 90% of the public land is in the western part of the state, which, if you know anything about Texas, you can drive all day and still be in Texas,
Yeah.
10 or 12 hours. So yeah, not a lot of public or private. Like, people are not, you talked about knocking doors. That's not going to happen very well where I live because there's a lot of capital. Like, people have a lot of land and they don't need, one, they're not going to let you do it. And two, if you offer them money to lease their land, they're like, I don't need money, so it's
Interesting.
one of those things.
Also, public's free. So would you rather hunt public and try to sneak a good one in there every couple of years, or would you rather go and try to lease up a property that's probably not going to be budget friendly if it's good, kind of like Christy was saying?
And it's cool because, like, in Oklahoma, $2 state, Texas is like a $3 state, but Oklahoma specifically, with $2, like I know in Delaware, I think where you said you're at, you can't do this, but you can get a blend of both of those experiences if you want to. Like, you can hunt public and private. Like, I try to do 1 and 1 every year, right? Like, Jake's got family land. I think his goal will be to shoot one on private and one on public every year. So it's a really good blend of both of those experience and like becoming a better woodsman by hunting public. Because if you're not hunting different places, especially challenging places like public land, you're not becoming better as a hunter. And so it's really easy to fall back into that with people that have a lot of private. And I think that's kind of what we're not trying to do.
I switch where I think there's mature bucks because I know some public land where there's a mature deer that I'm chasing, but also there's private land spots where I'm like, okay, that's where I hunt. But I think a lot of people overpressure their properties, and if they do have private access, and they can kind of ruin it or push the buck that they're after. If you're going after a certain deer off because they're hunting it too much, and then he's going to be there when you're not there just because of the way that maybe he's patterning you instead of you patterning him. So I've seen that. So basically, I just go where the biggest buck is. I saw something on another hunting podcast where they're basically like, would you rather go kill the biggest buck that you can find on many properties, or would you rather just not shoot a buck at all on just your private land that you're working on? And I would rather just go find the biggest buck that I can kill in a year and not just pass deer and be like, okay, I'm hoping one comes through
Oh, that
because I have that option.
that's how we are too. It's like we're agnostic of where the big buck is. Like those big bucks are so rare anyways that it's like I don't care if it's in the back of a quick trip parking lot if they'll let me hunt it. I mean, it really doesn't matter to us, like public, private, no matter what. Like we're aligned with you. That's exactly what we would do too.
I mean, the hunting public has given a very open-minded approach to that just to explain to people that there is those big bucks. Granted, a lot of them are in like Iowa and stuff, but still, they're big bucks can be killed on public land. It's just finding the right public land, especially some that are overlooked. Like I, I've killed deer 3 miles deep in a swamp, but I've also killed deer probably 50 yards off of a highway. So like, I mean, it all depends where the deer are. So
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
we've killed them. Like Jake's killed them a mile deep in public. We've killed them 300 yards in public, big and
And
small.
the a funny thing about that is uh so the week we were in Oklahoma public, just this last season, I got or I went to a spot that we had kind of previous history with, and I sat there, got walked up on, and I was like, no, drawing the line, not hunting this spot again. Well, Justin, which is Christian's uncle, he goes and sets that same area, and like probably a week and a half later, and he
Yep.
said he seen like a 150-inch deer just strolling by, and it's just like this area had a lot of people in it just a week ago, so you really don't know like where the big deer are and like what's going to push them because like I've said before, you can know everything about the spot, do everything right, and then it still not work out because a lot of factors like people could walk up on you, pressure the deer and stuff, and then you could also sit there and do everything wrong, hunt the wrong wind, this that and the other, and then someone get out of their stand early, or if in Peyton Carroll's situation, if he has to use the bathroom uh frequently, that could spook that big buck into your way. So like whether you do something right or wrong, it's just like you never know what's going to happen, and that's kind of what's great about hunting in a
That's the
way.
fun of public for
Right.
yeah.
sure. Like never knowing. Like that's what's awesome. Like somebody could jump up a hot doe who runs to you, who in turn has a big buck run after her. And it's like, this is the game we play, baby.
Well, that's the thing, and I experienced that for the first time in Idaho, my first time whitetail hunting there this year. It's like, I mean, there's a lot of private property. Basically, where I am at in Idaho was 97% of bucks were killed on private land in the zones that I was hunting. So that made it really difficult. And one of the guys leased all this land around me where I got permission just knocking on doors. And that guy just like he wanted to protect it from everyone, just paid thousands of dollars to basically keep people off of it. And there was still a lot of hunting pressure because everybody hunted in the area. But I could drive around on a given night and see tons of bucks. One time I saw 3 bucks all over 130 inches. 100, one was 150 chasing a hot doe in a field where basically the deer are never going to leave that area. So I had to pick and choose between huntable deer or keep looking at these ones on private that are never going to leave it. So that was interesting. And I spot and stalked the biggest deer in my life, a big 10 pointer. And I didn't, I didn't get him, but I got within 30 yards of him, 40 yards of him. But I just didn't want to take a frontal shot because I didn't have the heavy arrow kind of set up that I felt like I could just go through the front. And I screwed that up, but I was just so happy that I even had that opportunity. Like I just never had the opportunity to spot and stalk a big deer like that, see the steam coming out of his nostrils, like
Oh, that's
freaking
sick.
300-pound deer. Like realistically, my biggest deer is 200 pounds and he was bigger than that. So like I was just I mean, seeing him all rutted up was just so cool to see a mature deer that close that I could see his breath. But he was bedded with a doe, and I couldn't have been happier that I could have that chance on public land, and it can happen anywhere. But going to the next segment, what is the range usually? Obviously, every deer is different, like every human. But what's the core area of a lot of the mature bucks in your guys' areas? Do they travel a lot?
That I Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, I mean, you could probably answer this better than I can. On public, we don't know. Like
Yeah.
they could be. I mean, because I don't know how it is where you hunt. I think you said it's like primarily like thick timber and stuff.
Hmm.
But on the public where we hunt, it's like really mountainous and pretty thick. And like there's some clear cuts every once in a while. But I mean, after they clear cut or whatever they do with it, by the end of that summer, it's all like head high grass, which is good. But and you would think they would bed there, but as you as you learn a little bit more, like you finally figure out that they bed everywhere in the like
Mm.
in at least where we hunt. And so it's to find them, I mean we rely heavily on trail cameras.
That's true. The What's really cool about Oklahoma is it's a super biologically diverse state. You have plains in the northwest, mountains in the southwest, mountains in the southeast. You're running into the Ozarks in the northeast, and like a mix of plains. So like, there's almost like these four different environments within one state, and depending on which one of those you're hunting, you're going to have completely different experiences with like where a mature deer is going to bed. So like in some of those mountainous places, like Jake said, there's a bedding everywhere. So it seems like those deer change their beds often because they
Yeah.
can, you know what I mean? But in the southwest portion of the state where you have a lot of mountains, but you have more big ag and cover is the limited resource, you see a lot of those deer like sticking to like, I'm pretty convinced, Jake, that on the lease, I have some deer that don't leave the lease. Like I shot,
I mean, I could see it.
How many acres is that?
we have a 110-acre lease, me and Peyton do,
Oh,
and
that's possible. Yeah.
we've killed the last 3 years, we've killed two 7.5-year-old deer and one 6.5-year-old deer.
Wow.
Most patternable, some of the most patternable, most consistent deer that I've ever had. And the thing is that lease is just all bedding, right? So I think the home range of those older bucks, I think it's common knowledge that they shrink the older they get, but it seems like those bucks in those really old age classes, 6.5, 7.5, their home range is very small. Like I'm talking like a 100-acre chunk. It seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, for me here in New Hampshire, Idaho's different. Idaho, it seems to be like you could keep a deer on 40 acres if you had like the right property. But where I'm at in New Hampshire, I mean, I've had bucks where I had one under my tree stand and I could have shot it 15 minutes before legal light and poached it with my bow, but a guy killed it a day later, 8 miles away, same exact deer.
What?
We
Goodness.
exchanged it. So I mean, it just differs a lot. I mean, someone I know had a double drop tine buck they killed, and it had trail camera photos. And we live on the state of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and the buck went into Massachusetts for summer and came all the way back here in New Hampshire for wintering and rutting, and it traveled 11 miles. So
See,
I mean, that's just crazy to me.
I don't think we see much of that where we're at. I think one of the farthest like notable trail cam like deer migrations that we've seen like on a bedding area or like a home range. Jake, your buck that you killed on public a couple years ago was like a little over a mile away. We saw him move from one seat fall to the next.
I don't think it was a mile. I think it was like two or three. Like
Was it?
as a crow flies, because that was like on southeast part, and then his was
Oh, that's true because
obviously
you
in the
killed it a
middle.
mile deep. Okay, yeah. No,
Yeah.
so a couple miles, at least a couple miles. That's I think the biggest we've seen. But also you got to take into account we don't have properties where we can say if a buck
For
moves
sure.
3 miles away, we know.
Now
100%.
on my private, I do know that the bucks for sure at least move 1 mile, because there was like five of my target bucks this season that from Facebook I found out got killed a mile north of me. So
Mm.
yeah, they at least move a mile. I know that.
Alrighty. Social stress is one of the next things I want to talk about. What do you guys see with the amount of deer? So if you're hunting on private land, the amount of deer that you guys try to hold, are you guys doing food plots at all? What are the strategies for your private land to hold deer, and do you have any management objectives?
Tell them about your food plots, Jake.
Yeah. I'm trying to get up to like 10 food plots, and right now I don't have
Sheesh.
any at all. So yeah, there's that. I got
Sponsor him, people, so he gets
right. I need
free
it.
stuff.
He needs a tractor, seeds,
Yeah.
this.
Nah,
He needs
just
everything.
nah, no till food plots, dude. Jeff Sturgis. I did it. It worked.
There you go.
No, we just okay, so luckily my family is really into farming pecans, and so it's like
Hmm.
a pretty healthy pecan orchard. I mean, so you got the old ones, and then you got like the kind of uh oh, what do you call those? The almost like teenage, is it juvenile pecan trees or something, and then you got the ones that are just planted. So they always got something to eat as long as the crows and the little corn thieves will stay
Trash
away.
pandas.
Yep. And then other than that, I just got like two feeders. So other than that, like not much food, to be honest.
I think we're both pretty simplistic on what we do. Like one of the issues is you got a lot of people that kind of have done things the way they've always done things. So proposing putting in a food plot or disrupting someone's property in any way is like a no. It's like a no no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like on my lease properties, one, I don't want to do that because I don't know year to year on if I'm going to be able to keep any of these places.
I think
And
they'd allow you to
Yeah,
do that
that
though.
yeah.
they probably would allow me to do it, but um, where
If
I'm
you're paying
hunting,
for it, I would feel like you should.
true. Where I'm hunting with this lease though, like there's been some very strict like management around the surrounding areas for a long period of time, like a couple decades. And so what we're trying to do on the lease is like shoot 5.5 year old deer or older. And that is, like I told you, we've had the lease for a couple years, and then we have another one. And the ones that I know have been shot out of are 5.5, 6.5, and two 7.5s. So this property consists of like a lot of these places are just like bedding only. And they're like I told you, there's big ag all around with a limited
Hmm.
resource being bedding. And so the from a food perspective, yes, the deer have to go off of the property to get the probably the proper nutrition apart from corn, but we hold all the bedding for the most part on some of these leases, and it's
And that's
like
important.
it is very important because we have the bedding, we have the deer. You might have them at a certain moment to feed, but we have them probably where they're spending most of their daylight hours. And in my mind, if that's the limited resource in that area, I would rather have more bedding than food because they can always go to a 80-acre winter wheat field or an 80-acre bean field. I'm never going to be able to put that much
I was about to say.
food.
Agreed.
With that being said, I mean, you just can't compete with the amount of food that's around there, anyways. So, I mean, yeah, just stick with what you get for sure.
Yeah, I think I could like put a little bit of food, but here's like I'm kind of the mind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like the quality of deer that we've been able to put down and the age structure and the management around there has been so good that I'm kind of like I'm a little nervous to put in a food plot. I'm like, what if this changes the way the deer bed? What if it changes the way they interact on the property? We kind of have it figured out to some extent, and it's like I'm very weary of changing any of that until I need to.
So that's a great question. So I want to get into killing some more mature bucks. We just don't. I mean, if it's brown, it's down out here, and I've tried to get away from that, and I pass more bucks than I probably should. But when you guys see that age structure, what's like a big buck down where you guys are?
Like inches wise,
Yeah, for
there's a
like a
lot of
5 year old or whatever. Like,
5 year
what's
old.
a
Jake, what do you think an average 5 year old score?
I wouldn't know, to be honest. Uh,
Jake can tell you an average
I
4 year
can't
old
see
score is
I
three.
can't see the antlers on those bucks behind you, so
oh, you don't need to
can't
see
tell.
those anyways. It's fine. No, I don't think I've ever shot a 5-year-old. Now, granted, my biggest deer, I've never had the jaw aged or whatever, but I like I don't think they would have made 5 years old, but I think like a 4 year old, if it's a rather healthy one, I think up here northeast, if the neighbors could all get along, I really think it wouldn't be a problem like seeing 130, 140 inch 4 year old, like no problem.
I think an average 4-year-old down where I hunt quite a bit in the western part of the state is probably about 140 inches. Like, and I'm talking about a 10 point, right?
Yeah.
Most deer aren't going to be a 10 point. So
If
an
that's an
average,
8, dear God.
oh yeah, that'd be a monster. No, I mean, you got a heck of a lot of those 120, and I'm talking about gross, not net, 120 to 130 range. Like Peyton shot a deer this last year off the lease. It was 6.5 years old, probably in that 130-ish range, but had a 6-inch basis. I mean, I mean, a monster of a buck just
Top
was
hands.
never going to put like you just wouldn't expect a 6.5-year-old deer to have a 130-inch rack. You'd think if I can get him to maturity, he's going to be 130, 140, 150, step up every year. But naturally, most of those deer just don't get that way. And I don't know why that exactly is. But I'd say 130, 140.
What are both of your biggest deer? Just curious.
Christy?
Not that score matters because it really doesn't. I'd rather hunt mature deer and do that, but
About that big.
that one in the middle.
No, I'm just kidding. I think my 142 and 7/8. I had that deer officially scored, so that's why I know. Jake had his
Nice.
biggest officially scored too.
Yeah, my biggest is 162 and some change.
I don't kill big bucks. Shut the freak up.
Hey, a blind squirrel can find a nut every once in a while, okay?
Yeah, that's
That's
true.
that's about what happened. So
Yeah, that's all right. That's a beautiful buck. Wow. Why do you think you killed that compared to the other times? Because I know a lot of times we'll see hunters that don't kill any bucks for 20 years and then they kill a giant one or maybe a Boone Crockett and they're like, I'm such a good deer hunter. But in reality, we all know that sometimes people do things right without knowing it, and that's why they're successful. So, do you think you know why you were successful in that particular deer?
on that one, I mean, it was definitely a group effort. Because Christy and I probably, I don't know how many nights we or weekends we
Like
stayed
9 nights in the truck.
in
Wow.
2020, and uh, which it's a pretty good ways from both of our houses. But yeah, I think 1 or 2 weekends a month we would go down there during the summer and hang cameras, go back the next month, check them, rehang them, and we just did that constantly and until we like felt we had uh a pretty good mind like a mindset of what all's happening kind of in the areas we keened in on. And one of those times we went and checked it, uh it was funny because we had a really good bachelor group of bucks come through on this like old abandoned road type thing. And as we were checking those and trying to move all the cameras kind of towards that area, we ended up getting one picture of that buck. And of course, it was the biggest buck we had on camera. So we're like, all of our resources to there. And that's what we did. And continuing all through the rest of the late summer and even in part of the season, we were still hanging cameras and moving it. And I don't want to sound like a David Goggins of
Truck
uh
cams.
summer scouting and stuff like that, but like that's literally what we did. And I think that's by far the only reason we killed that buck.
Awesome. That's I think that's important to understand. I don't know how much time you guys spend scouting, but I think that's definitely important. I don't think people scout enough, to be honest with you, especially in the late season. I think a lot of people just speed scout a couple of weeks before season, and some cases in pressured area that ruins it, but sometimes you just got to get away from that pressure because it's inevitable, especially on public land, like you said, Christian. It's just like that's the fun of it. It's going to be hard, and you're going to have to. Sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't. Um,
We used to never, I'm telling you, until we were like 18, 19 years old, we never scouted. Like
No,
really,
no.
the most that we had done was taking this was our big buck work in the summer. We'd be like, all right, grab the weed eater, let's go to Walmart, get a couple bags of corn, get
Literally.
some AA pull out some pocket change of the cup holder and get some AA batteries for your one trail camera, and there's your deer season prep. That's what we used to do, like for deer hunting. And then when we started hunting public land, we were like, hey, we can go down here on the weekends and get in a tree and hope something works out, but let's kind of try to figure out why things are happening the way they are. And we had some monstrous streaks of luck when we didn't know our head from our
Anything.
butt. And
Yeah.
through several years of just a lot of summer scouting and the willingness to kind of move around a little bit on different pieces of public, we've learned a ton. And anybody listening, I would just encourage that on as many different pieces of public you can look at and as many different environments as you can get in, while still being able to afford like Joe Biden's gas prices. Um, that's what I would recommend. That's how you become a good woodsman. We're not there yet, but I think we're on our way if we continue at this pace for the next 20 years.
Yeah, I just need to move somewhere down there so I can get some rep to my name to shoot some bigger bucks and act like all this knowledge that I do have, I can put it to good use.
There you
No,
go.
no, I'm trying to make do with what I have, but what do you guys see from scrape standpoints? Is that something that you rely heavily on? What's the majority of the public land sign that you're looking for when you do go on it?
You got it, Christy.
Scrapes. We see some scrape. We see some scrape activity.
It's harder to
One of
see down there though because
yeah,
it's so
Is
rocky.
it?
So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's fairly rocky, but I mean, obviously, a lot of the different pieces of sign, right? It's like it's tracks, it's droppings, it's scrapes, it's all of those things coming together, and then rubs. Rubs are a really big one for us. Like rub lines in the mountains. So kind of how the topography lays out in a lot of the mountains, it creates a lot of edge habitat. So you
Mm-hmm.
have like very thick native grasses meeting pine and like cedar and oak flats. And where those two places meet together is usually a really, really good travel corridor, right? Deer obviously feel safe. They can pop in and out. And when I find those really good pieces of edge habitat, along with really good scrapes, really good rubs, droppings, tracks, that's kind of like Jake likes to quote one person. I forget who said it, but that's the X marks the spot in my mind.
Parker McDonald, that's who said
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, just to kind of dumb it down a little bit, like in that mountain stuff, thick timber, it seems like everything looks the same. And like, you're like, oh, well, if I walk another 200 yards down this ravine, is it going to look any different? Well, probably not. And so that's what Christian was kind of saying is like the only way that things don't look different is when you find those edges. So like, where the tall grass meets the hard timber, and then maybe there's like a little bench or a creek that kind of runs through there, like in a way. And so, I mean, that's kind of what we look for a lot of the times because, I mean, just to say it again, like everything looks the same. So find what doesn't, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah, I mean, the majority of the big woods bucks that I've hunted and had success, it's either I had to find their bed specifically. Granted, a lot of public land bucks do bed in multiple areas, like you said earlier in this episode. They do have multiple beds. I don't know any bucks where I live that have only one bed, but I know where they bed at least in the winter and also where they bed in bachelor groups. So that's where I usually find their sheds. And occasionally I'll have hunts where I can do that, but majority of the pressure bumps them out of those beds and you have to get as close as possible to them. But the deer don't do exactly what they're supposed to, like Iowa. You can't expect the deer to act normal here. That's for sure after the first 2 days.
I hear
Um,
you.
Another thing that we find for all the big woods hunters watching is just primary scrape areas. So if I see a scrape on the ground and even rub lines, unless it's the beginning and I know that rub is from this year and it's leading back to a bed or something, I honestly don't pay attention to it. And I know a lot of beginner hunters, and what I did is I'd be like, oh, here's a big, like what I'd call a signpost or something, like just a normal rub, thinking it was a signpost or something special. Or just like one lone scrape in the middle of nowhere where there's no security cover. I'd be like, oh, I should hunt here. And I'd waste my sit there when the deer are never going to come there in daylight. They're never going to come through there. But once I found that, like, okay, if everything lines up, I know John Eberhart, and I've talked to him a lot and had a lot of different chats with him, and he basically explained to me what like primary scrape areas were. And I found this one, basically the heavens open when I found it. I was like, holy crap, this is what I've been looking for. It's in a pinch point near a swamp in a bedding area. And right through there, there's a car door size scrape, and then like 4 or 5 other scrapes around it. And the deer will just J hook naturally. I don't know. Do you guys know what J hooking is?
Move around to scent check that scrape.
Yeah. So basically, like for all the people that don't know what J hook is, they'll go downwind 100 to 300 yards downwind. Um, Usually after they're like 3 years old, it depends. And they'll take a separate trail other than the different deer that go into the scrape. They are careful and they'll scent check it. Sometimes they won't even come into it. So if you put a trail camera over a scrape, sometimes you don't get that video until nighttime because maybe they scent checked it earlier downwind. But that's something that I see a lot. So I try to find that trail and set up on the trail, not necessarily right over the scrape, but downwind of it. So that's something I've seen, but just basically those areas where there's security cover or near bedding where the does will come by to try to get picked up in the rut and hunt that spot. But those are the majority of the areas where I find success.
Yeah, what's the saying? Like one is luck, two is a coincidence, three's a pattern. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I'm
I
with
say
you on
that
this
for
great.
bass fishing.
There you go.
I caught them on the chatterbait. 3 fish, that's a pattern. Keep going.
There you go.
Just kidding. I don't have a southern accent. That was my best interpretation.
Hey, it's pretty good.
Um, so going from there, do you guys want to talk about your channel a little bit? I'd be interested in just shout out the 10K followers. You guys are almost there doing a giveaway. I won't talk too much about the giveaway because I want to win it, but
Yeah, you don't want to like put in your competition to the giveaway. Like,
yeah, right.
yeah, I get that. No, we got a lot of cool stuff up on the Hunters Advantage YouTube channel. Like you said, we're like very much closing in on 10K probably the next couple days. We got a cool giveaway with our primary sponsor right now out on a limb. We're giving away a couple set of sticks, and or sorry, three sticks, and then a saddle hunting platform, and then obviously the best merchandise on the planet. We're giving away some of our own
Oh
hats and
yeah.
a shirt. But no, we got some. I feel like we got some pretty cool hunts, reviews, just interesting educational and entertainment content, just all around hunting. We don't like to limit ourselves to like just deer hunting, right? Like we could probably sell out to that, but I think we're like most people. Like we like deer hunting, we like turkey hunting.
Yep.
We're equal opportunity hunters. And heck, dude, if I get so bored that I have nothing else to do, I'll even pick up a fishing pole
Yeah,
every
that's what
once
I'm
in
saying.
every once in a while. But no, we got a lot of cool stuff going on there, and we're always looking to kind of meet new people and just keep growing the community. Is there anything to add to that, Jake? I think I probably stole a lot of the thunder.
Ostrich hunting. You want to talk about that next? No, I'm just kidding.
That's
I would
right.
do some ostrich hunting. That would be pretty cool. That and then I don't want to get off topic too much, but I was listening to a podcast today. It was like you know who Adam Greentree is?
I do not.
Okay, he's like an Australian bow hunter and stuff like that.
Okay.
And one of his like colleagues or something that he was making that arrow with, that Nexus arrow. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Hmm.
They were talking about just going out and hunting kangaroos, like when they first started getting into bow hunting, and I was like, that's wild. Like, what do?
Yeah.
You try to spot and stalk them? Like how would that be to hunt a kangaroo? And I don't know. That just kind of blew my mind today, so I had to talk about it.
Well, it's interesting. I watched this video like years and years ago. This guy would catch all these animals barehanded. So he would like set up in like a wallow for like these deer, basically where they like go into the mud and like cool off, and he would just wait there, camoed out all over his face. And one time he grabbed a dead emu, skinned it out, and put it on himself because the kangaroo was gonna come up and eat it or something crazy like that. I guess they like play with them or when they're dead or something. So he dressed up in the emu costume and then grabbed the kangaroo.
Oh
So I was like,
my god!
you could put on the spot and stalk with your bow with an emu. emu decoy.
Wild.
Who would
Some
want to
people
do
are
that?
just a lot more
I have
devoted
no
than me, I
clue, dude.
guess.
He's a psycho from Australia. So,
Have you seen how jacked some of those kangaroos are, dude? I swear that
oh
some of them are
yeah,
like competitive bodybuilders. I would not want
they'll kill
to.
you too.
I know. I've seen some good fist fights between some guys and some kangaroos.
Have you seen the
Now,
one where the guy's getting his dog attacked
Oh
and he
yeah,
hits it in the
sucker
snout?
punches it.
Yeah.
I'll be
That's
impressed with
awesome.
Khabib as soon as he boxes a kangaroo. Like I think anyone can like wrestle a bear, but you get him in the ring with the kangaroo, so it happens.
Yeah, it's a fair fight.
Well, reposted a video that this other guy told about the story in the 60s, but I don't know if it's true or not, but we tend to sometimes expand our hunting stories and make them seem a little bit more crazy than they are. But he said that he was skinning out a deer and a grizzly bear attacked him, and he took out his pocket knife and stabbed it 3 times in the neck, and then it circled around after breaking his left arm. Basically, it was dangling on the skin. There's like photos of it. And the bear comes up to charge him, and he said he learned from an old farmer that if you take a paddle and hit a bear or like a snout animal like on the nose, it like startles them. So he only had his fist, obviously. So he went and punched it right in the nose, and it dropped dead. And
With
they
the one
think
that was dangling or the good arm.
with
God.
with the good arm. Oh, Jake. But yeah, so he punched it in the nose, and I guess the vertebrae where he like stabbed it must have like hit the spine, I guess, and basically just like was lights out. So he basically killed a bear with his freaking punch
Dude,
after
he's got the
stabbing it.
punch of death.
Yeah, I was like, this man is Khabib or something. That is insane.
That's awesome.
He's not a Russian, but man, sign him up
For
for the
real.
Soviet Union or something.
Hit him with a strong hand.
Yeah. I mean, what's just before we close and stuff, is there any crazy hunting stories that you guys would like to tell? I always love hearing hunting stories.
What's the craziest one we got, Jake? You got any
Trying to
ostrich or
think.
kangaroo ones?
I don't have any of those. Oh, how graphic can we get on this?
Do whatever you want.
Okay, cool. So it was I'll say the WMA because I hate that place. It's called WMA in Oklahoma. It's like on the northern side, right there, below Kansas. Is that the right one?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
land you're
I'll
talking
draw.
about?
Yeah, yeah. It's a wildlife management area.
Yeah, we were. I don't know if we were trying to turkey hunt or I forget what was happening, but somehow, some way, we had 12 gauges and we seen a group of hogs. And here in Oklahoma, like hogs are about as good as coyotes. Like you can shoot them year round,
Yeah.
basically with whatever. You can go up and stab them if you want. But like I said, we had turkey shot and a few shells and then a little group of pigs. So we decided to try to sneak up as close as possible and just try to put a stock on one. And that's kind of what we did. And we got a pig like within like 7 yards and then just annihilated it.
The rest
So,
is history.
yeah. I would have been able to, I think, get like at least another one, but my gun jammed, the old Remington 12 gauges.
The 870, baby.
Yeah, they tend to do that. So yeah, I think that would be like the most crazy one I've had so far.
I got a crazier one.
What's that?
Also on public land, but for turkeys. Um, I was hunting a group of turkeys one time on public land with my buddy Jake. Not this Jake. I got like 5 buddies named Jake. It sucks.
It's
But
a good name.
yeah, it's great. Very common.
None other Gaylords though.
Nope.
Hey,
None of them cocks
are you
either.
a college football fan? The Gaylord Memorial Stadium in Norman. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Legacy.
Nope, just a Patriots fan.
Mm,
Oh.
we won't talk about that. No, I was hunting turkeys on public land with my other buddy named Jake, and we were working this bird all morning. Like we had walked in from a completely opposite way at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Literally stripped down to our underwear to walk across a river like waist deep. Got dressed back up again, and we were working this bird. He was gobbling. We probably had him gobble 50 times, and there was another way to access this WMA from the north side, but it was through trespassing on private land. And we were like, you know what? We're going to do it the right way. We could drive in that way. But we're not going to. Well, as we're working this bird, we start to hear like this really crappy calling, like way over to our right. And I wasn't a professional caller at the time either. My buddy Jake was basically guiding me. So I just hear this like this crappy calling over the right. And I was like, it's fine. Like this bird's gonna know that this other guy's full of it. Well, as we're sitting here doing this back and forth, right? Like we're calling, this bird's blowing up. The other guy's calling. We already got him so fired up. Even the crappy calling is firing this bird up. He's like, and he's walking. He'd walk like 5 steps to the right, like to go to us, and then he'd walk 5 steps to the left to go to the other guy. And he was just so confused, right? Like he didn't know what to do. Well, all while this is happening, like we have a hen decoy probably 12 yards out in front of us. And as this is all happening, I start to see like bushes moving behind the turkey. And this is like on private land to the north. So I'm like, who's coming off private land like right now? Well, there was a guy calling to the right. We were calling to the left, and his buddy had snuck all the way around trespassing onto private and popped out of the bushes 60 yards away from the turkey with a ghillie suit on. And I'm like, oh my God, like this guy's gun barrel's pointed like right at us. And I'm like, oh, dude. So, like, at this point, we're like, cover your face. We cover our face. Boom. Pellets spray over us. We're like, ah. And we're like, he's reloading. We're like, throw our heads down again.
Oh my gosh.
Boom. And we're like, ah. Well, this guy was shooting a modified choke. Not a full, not an extended choke, an in gun modified choke at this turkey from 60 yards. Well, the bird is so confused. Like I told you, we're calling to the left, they're calling to the right. A guy isn't on the other backside of the turkey. The turkey gets so confused, he runs to the guy, and at like 40 yards away,
What?
the turkey's confused. Eventually, on the guy's last shot, boom, he folds him up, probably from all the peppering from the other 2 shots and the other one. But yeah, that was a time that I got absolutely peppered on public land turkey hunting, and kind of put a bad taste in my mouth.
Dang. Well, you guys can't see it, but I did get, it's not a state record anymore. It's like number 3 now. But for the state I live in, it got 5 beards. So it's like the non-typical record.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I got really lucky doing that. But the same season, turkey hunting, I had a guy come up on me when I was decoying, and he shot my freaking decoy. I'm like, he shoots, and of course it doesn't move. It's the worst decoy you can probably buy. It's like a $30 decoy. I'm like, are you dumb enough to not know that me calling? I'm no pro either. I'm like, I'm calling. It's not like I'm a good caller, and I'm also doing a hen, not
right,
a tom. So I'm not I'm not doing that. I'm just doing it. So I was just doing that, and he was just shot at. I'm like, and he's like, oh, sorry. And then he cuts back the other way. I'm like, well, you ruined the hunt already. But it was just funny. It like threw a couple pellets in my fan of the fake decoy. So
I've been Venmo requesting him $30.
Well, Christy, I think, had a similar experience with that. Was it you or Jake that had a guy crawling through a field to do this?
We talked to a guy after a hunt one time, and he had a decoy. He had a tom decoy out, right, and it was a full strut decoy, of course, the real fan. So he was tucked back in this brush, and he had his decoy out in this winter wheat field. This is also on this same crappy WMA, but there's a guy crawling through the winter wheat, like, and it is wet. So he's crawling through to get to this guy's decoy. Well, the guy sees him the entire time, right? Like, he's obviously sees a guy, because you're not going to sneak up to a turkey without a fan or something across an open field. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how low you get to the ground. But this guy was convinced that he could. So he crawls. The guy,
but he knew the guy was?
No, he did not know so the guy that is hunting with his decoy, he sees the guy crawling up, and he lets him. He lets him crawl all the way into 80 yards, and then he stands up. He goes, hey. The guy's like, why'd you let me crawl that whole way? He's like, I don't know. I wasn't going to say nothing. Like, he let him crawl. Dude, guy gets up. He's got mud from his neck to his toes. Like, he had crawled like 400
Oh, my
yards.
gosh.
But that goes to show you how willing people are to kill one of these animals sometimes. And it's like, I would not do that.
I've never tried that hard for a turkey.
Not for a turkey. Maybe for a deer.
Deer? Yeah. Turkey now. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know about that. That's so funny though. Those awesome. Just make my day. That's so funny. I mean, those are stories that you can tell your kids, and one day, and yeah, that's
Those
just
are good stories for a hunter safety course.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
No,
ain't no
seriously,
joke.
just be like, make sure you're wearing orange. Make sure there's orange on the turkey. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
But I've seen different people put like turkeys decoys on remote controlled cars and all
Oh my
sorts of
God.
funny
Oh.
things.
We got to outload those
Yeah,
on public land. That's
yeah,
terrible.
that's I mean, I feel like fanning you could get away with that and just walk across the field with your shotgun through the fan and just walk up on one. But obviously, it depends how pressured the turkeys are and whatever the case. But yeah, that one year so we can get 2 turkeys here. So I got this one that has 5 beards, and then I got another one that's up in my room, and that one has a 9-inch beard. But I mean, there there's a lot of turkeys out here. There's just not like always long beard. There's just a lot of jakes, but
Don't discriminate.
yeah, nope. Long or short, they're always okay, right, Jake? Is that what your wife
That's what I'm
tells you?
saying. That's
Just
what I'm
kidding.
saying.
No, I'm just kidding. So you guys are both married then?
I'm
Uh,
married. Jake's got a fiance.
yeah, I'm engaged.
Yeah, he has a.
Same thing.
There you go.
Sweet. How old are you guys, if you don't mind me asking?
That's rude to ask.
I won't put this on the
No,
podcast.
I'm
Why
just
are you a woman, Jake?
No, you didn't ask me about my weight, so that's different, I guess.
I'm
No,
38. No, I'm just
Really?
kidding. No,
I was like,
20. I'm
what?
26.
I was like,
I'm
I'm
25.
22. There's no way.
Yeah, Jake's 25. He's like my younger brother.
okay, bud. By 2 months.
I'm older, therefore
See you
wiser.
Did
then.
you guys go to high school together then?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Most of my hunting buddies came through like me and them selling them Facebook Marketplace stuff, and now we're like best buddies. That's how I've made a lot of my hunting buddies. But because
I heard that's a
I
lot of the
haven't grown up
Netflix
with a lot.
documentaries. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm yeah, thank goodness I haven't been murdered, if that's what you mean.
I was gonna say you gotta be careful on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, luckily they're
Well,
married and with kids, so hopefully that is a little bit of a help, but you never know.
we're telling you to be careful with Facebook Marketplace when that's where we found one of our hunts before.
That's true. One of our better ones too.
Yeah, it was actually one of our better hunts, and we very easily could have got murdered there and like probably never found. So,
This is
but it
worth
worked
though.
out.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Good,
probably.
good. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your knowledge and being able to get your southern perspective, because I obviously don't know what a lot of the terrains down there is like, and hopefully I can come hunt down there sometime. But that's freaking awesome that you guys can come on, and hopefully the little subscribers that I have, over 3,000, we can try to get you guys over the hump to 10K.
There we go.
That'd be
Thanks,
awesome.
man. We really appreciate you jumping on. I've listened to a couple of your episodes so far, and I've enjoyed it. You're doing a heck of a lot better than I was, so I'm excited to see where the show goes.
I'm faking it until I make it, so I appreciate it. But
Aren't we all?
I have no clue what I'm doing when it comes to the podcast portions, but I have nothing else. I have no more content basically for hunting, so I figured I might as well do a podcast until I can go out shed hunting with all the closures out west. So
Yeah,
we
there we
will
go.
hopefully I can be on yours if you guys do a shed hunting thing, or we'll figure it out in the future, have you guys back on or something.
Yeah,
for
dude.
sure.
And if you're ever around, hey, it's there's a lot of states in a very small area. You get come down to the south, so if you're ever around, just hit us up. We'd love to get together.
Sounds good. We can go out to dinner or something.
Yeah, you got to take me to dinner first. I can't take you to my hunting spots.
Yeah. Need to buy you a drink before I can see the goods, right?
That's right. Yep.
Hey, well, I really appreciate it, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your night. I'll
Thanks,
let
man.
let you get back to the wives.
There we go.
The old
Alrighty.
ladies. Appreciate it again, man.
No problem. Take care.
Thanks, dude. See ya.
Bye. That ends another podcast on Bows, Bros, and Bucks. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys liked it.
Jordans, you can say you hate me, you can call me crazy, but don't touch my truck.